For those of you who don't know Hamada, he's a UC Berkeley Law School grad. He's an admissions counselor. He helps folks with the admissions process. And he's here tonight with us to chat a little bit about the law school admissions during COVID.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Steve. It's an absolute pleasure. And I always applaud you for your efforts to constantly put out content, good content that helps your students and helps others out there in the field that are looking into applying to law school. And obviously, as you said, the COVID crisis is really causing a lot of stir and a lot of issues amongst a lot of people in tribulation in terms of what's the best way to approach it. So I thought we can talk about that. And I thought I can talk about a couple other bonus topics that may be of interest to your constituents as well and your audience. And then obviously feel free to ask any questions that you have along the way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hamada. So I'm going to let you present. I'm going to let you field questions from the chat. Folks, feel free to pepper Hamada with all your toughest questions. He's a pro. He knows his stuff. And so Hamada, there's a link in the chat. Feel free to field them as you like, and feel free to discuss as you like, and I'll let you take it away.
Sounds fantastic. I appreciate it. So thank you very much again, Steve, for having me on this very, very important time and important conversation to be having about the COVID situation as it pertains to law school admissions. I think a lot of students, a lot of clients for Right Track Admissions, the company that I lead, have been asking truthfully about what is it worth applying to law school, and if it is now the time, or should they be waiting for law school admissions? I think what you need to really consider is that, yes, law school is creating law school in itself is a very, very important decision. And the COVID crisis and the fact that a lot of schools are closing their doors and shuttering for the fall semester, pushing people online, and then hopefully having in-class participation later in the winter or spring, is also causing a lot of confusion, right? If you have a 3-year degree and you're paying, I don't know, $60,000 a year, and your first semester, which is one of the most important and nerve-wracking in so many ways, is it worthwhile to still go to school for the fall of 2021, right? Now, the question, I guess, begs is, will COVID continue? If it does continue, will it impact 2021 and onwards? And I would say, again, for the ability of law schools to maintain their ability to get funding from students, they really, really have to be smart about how fast they can get students into the classroom. So I think the first question you want to ask yourself is it worth applying to for fall 2021? And once you decide that, what are the factors that you need to be considering? And so I want to kind of pepper you with certain questions regarding what factors to be thinking about as you put together your application. So the first question obviously is it worth it? And I think from my experience, from what I've seen so far, is that yes, I think it definitely is worth it applying for fall 2021. I think for people who applied and are about to enter class for fall 2020, I think that decision is up for grabs. And I can tell you now, there's quite a few clients that have come back to me, and that's just me, but quite a few clients that have come back and said, we're going to defer. And I think it's fair. Again, if you're paying $60,000 for a given admissions year, it may not be worth it that $30,000 of those dollars are going to be spent behind a computer, very much like you're seeing here from my home, and not really getting that full experience. And so I think you really want to kind of consider if for those who are applying for or were accepted and would go to school in fall 2020 versus those who are applying for fall 2021. So I would say the jury's out. For fall 2020, I would, if I was in your shoes, I would defer, and some of my clients have deferred and have been accepted in terms of the deferment. What does that mean for those applying for fall 2021? It means the following. It means that there is going to be less seats available for you because they automatically, right, have to reserve the seats for those students that were accepted in fall for fall 2020 that are now going to be matriculating in fall 2021. So there's going to be less seats. I can't tell you how many. I couldn't tell you if it's 1% less seats or 10% or 20%, but I can tell you at least half of the clients that we've worked with have asked for deferrals, of which about 50% of those got the deferrals accepted. Some schools denied it and said, we can't allow you to defer, which meant they had no choice of either foregoing their acceptance or going to law school online. Okay, so that's just one question. I had a quick question here from one of the viewers who's asking the following. Yeah, and so exactly as I said, the question was, if many people have deferred for fall 2020, do you think 2021 will be more competitive? And I say yes. And I say yes cautiously. You have to, and Steve would probably know this because he's been dealing with this for quite a while, but the idea is admissions in and of itself has increased specifically from 2019. I think from 2014 to 2018, there's been a lull in admissions for schools. It's not the acceptance rate, but the number of applicants has decreased. But that suddenly started increasing around 2018 to 2019. And now we're facing a very weird, tumultuous period, right? So I think admissions was on the upward trajectory. And now what we're seeing is this weird, convoluted situation. One, people are applying more to law school because they're getting more involved in the political process. Black Lives Matter, political justice, the idea of what's going on in the political system in Washington, D.C. People want to take more of a proactive effort, right? And there is that correlation between politics and law, right? Over 20 of the last 43 presidents went to law school, right? A good number of people, Congress people, have law degrees. So people are pushing in that direction. And because of that, they're also finding that law is a viable option. And so it's increasing the increasing the number of applicants. For fall 2021, I imagine, and all indicators are proving and showing that there's going to be a steady, if not increase again in applications, because there's a lack of jobs, right? The job market is low, especially for recent graduates. And myself, a quick background is that when I graduated from UCLA, I had great grades, but a horrifically bad LSAT, which is so ironic because I'm on a podcast and on a webinar with the guru of the LSAT, and yet I really sucked at it, and I took it 3 times, and I did poorly every single time I took it, and that's why I really banked on the application to get me across the goal line and get me into Berkeley Law School. So when I was applying, it was at 2002, it was at the tail end of September 11th and the economic downturn there. And again, a lot of people were weathering the economic issues and economic recession by going back to graduate school so that they can upskill, so that they have new skills, so that when the economy does get back on track, they have the skills and they're ready to be employable. So the same trend has continued in 2008 and now looks like it's going to continue into 2020, 2021. So the quick answer for that is I would say that applications are going to either remain steady because they were already high or even increase for fall 2021. In addition to that, the deferment is also going to make a few of the schools have lesser seats because more people are deferring. So that's the first point that I really want to mention. Another fact that I want to mention is obviously the LSAT. And I think Steve has talked extensively about this, but the LSAT Flex has made it couldn't have come at a better time. I'm sure Steve has spoken about this extensively, but it couldn't have come at a better time to allow the people to take exams from home and to take it more remotely than what it was when I was taking it, which was only 4 times a year and was consistently the case for many, many years after that. So you do want to stay and look and be focused on the LSAT and the LSAT Flex in terms of dates. And what's really bizarre is, and again, Steve can attest to this, and I'm sure it's in his videos as well. When you're taking the LSAT, part of the whole experience is taking it in a environment with other students with a pencil and a timer, and it's nerve-wracking in a lot of ways. Now you're doing it from home. I would imagine if I had that option, I probably would have done better. But when everybody does better, the weighted average goes down overall, and what it takes to get a higher score essentially is going to be a higher overall aggregate score is going to be a higher absolute score. So that is a fundamental issue, and that's going to become even more of a factor as it pertains to the COVID crisis, since most of the exams, if not obviously, I would imagine all the exams are going to be taken from a remote location, which means I think people are going to generally do better in terms of absolute numbers of the questions they get right, but it's going to bring down the weighted average. So that's another factor that you want to consider because of the COVID crisis. Another factor that I think is very, very important, which is really our bread and butter, is the story you tell. Remember, Right Track's motto is discover your story, get admitted. And in that story and what's kind of going on in terms of garnering that story, now you guys want to be thinking about it because we're in July, is the fact that COVID has impacted every single person on earth. It's probably single-handedly, it's shocking, but single-handedly the most impactful experience in recent human history. If something terrible happened in one country, it doesn't necessarily have a knock-on effect in others. But this one has impacted 188 countries, infected close to 13.5 million people, killed over 500,000 people. But more importantly, it's just changed and skewed the whole social dynamic and made things very, very difficult to kind of navigate, right? And what do I mean by kind of navigating? I'm sure you guys understand this. It's made it harder for you guys to have solid activities over the summer or even during the school year. It's made it harder to visit campuses and check out law schools. For those that had the opportunity to go and check out law schools, it's been harder to audit classes that you may have planned to do. It's made it harder to really excel, not just in summer activities, but activities on campus, those leadership activities that really would have otherwise helped you in terms of developing your story and developing your pedigree and your resume to apply to law school, whether you're a student or even as a professional. And so it's very, very important now that you're considering, when you're thinking about law school and you're thinking about your essay, you really want to be thinking about what experience during COVID really stands out and how you'll work that into your application. And it may not necessarily be your personal statement, but it could be your personal statement or your diversity statement or your addendum, and even to some degree, your resume, which are the 4 core key components of the law school application. So when you're thinking about COVID and how it's impacted you, think about it exactly as that, how it impacted you and how it's impacting others. Oh, I heard my neighbor's been having issues. Or I heard my family across the country has been having issues. No. How's it impacting you? And what are you doing about it? And I can tell you, for those who are really suffering and don't have a lot of activities, this is a great opportunity to really think out of the box of what activities you can do that don't necessarily need to be legally related, but at least show compassion, a sense of community involvement that really helps you and really helps your community because it shows your character, right? It shows the kind of person you are and how you can really add value to that law school. So you got to really think out of the box. And I think schools are going to be particularly interested to see what you've been doing to really make yourself stand out during this crisis. And I have clients who are volunteering remotely, even wearing masks, giving out stuff, helping in all kinds of ways, even remote. But you've got to think out of the box on how you can do that. And don't just say, well, since I can't leave my home, then I cannot do anything productive that can help society. Okay, so those are just a couple of key takeaways from the LSAT. So deferrals, the LSAT, you want to think about itself, the story you're going to be, that you're going to be writing. And then finally, the other factor, which I think I spoke about in the beginning, and I'll quickly reiterate again, there may be a slight chance that you will not be able to be in person even in fall 2021. There may be surgences and resurgences and so forth. And so you want to basically decide with yourself, would you want to go to graduate school? Would you want to go to law school? In terms of, doing classes online. And a good way to know that, to be honest, and here's a tip, take a class on Coursera, take a class on Audacity, take a class on the Khan Academy, right? And get a sense of what it feels like to study remotely. And if that's something that works well for you, then by all means, because we don't know when things are going to normalize. I can't promise you that fall 2021 is going to be all in person or all online. We couldn't tell you. Nobody could tell you, right? So those are just a couple of fundamental factors for the COVID situation that's happening now, and some things to kind of think about. And I think the earlier you start writing your application, the far better it is going to be for you to really address those issues and address any kind of gaps that you have. We have a person right now that just basically said that they've been volunteering online with a compassion prison project. And I think that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And there's no reason. In fact, here's a crazy thought. Most of the times it would have been very difficult to be able to get volunteer activities because it required you to be there in person, which means they can only take so many people in person, which means they only have so much bandwidth, office space, what have you. There's probably opportunities to do immigration law, to do criminal justice law, all kinds of stuff. And that's just the legal field. There's a whole bunch of stuff outside that you can do simply by looking online, looking on LinkedIn, finding opportunities that exist, and simply working from home. They don't have to make a space for you in the office, and you can still get those experiences and build them up and develop them into whatever you want them to be, right? That can then inform your resume and other parts of your application. And why is all this important? Why are the activities so important? Because it helps better understand the continuum that's required for your application, right? If you're dreamed about immigration because it impacted you, right? And then you actually worked in an immigration clinic, or you worked with an immigration law firm, or you worked in a nonprofit or a pro bono center that did immigration rights or translated for immigration, it shows there's a continuum, right? This is who I am. This is what I've done. This is why I want to go to law school. So then I can do this at the end. You see what I'm saying? And that continuum is so mission critical for the storytelling aspect of what you would do when you are applying to law school. So if there's no more questions on COVID, and if you do have questions, I'll be on for at least another half an hour. Feel free to please pepper me with questions and so forth so I can be as helpful as I possibly can for you guys. What I do want to talk about as well is the diversity statement. And the diversity statement is very, very important. Again, I'm going to tie it to COVID, and I'm not going to just say this is kind of in vogue because the diversity statement has existed for a long time. It's a part of the application that we've helped numerous people with for many, many years. But let's put it this way. Diversity comes in terms of so many, many factors. And right now, diversity is in vogue. Diversity in the concept of inclusion because of the Black Lives Matter movement that has been ongoing, frankly, for a number of years, but really has come to the fray. And a lot of people are tying together the COVID crisis, racism, diversity, inclusion. Everything is kind of molding together in a certain way. At least that's how the way the news is projecting it, right? So you want to be thinking about diversity, and it's a very, very, very important factor in your law school application. And you may say, well, hang on a second. Not many law schools are directly asking me for a diversity statement, but they are asking something similar. What you're trying to do is produce the personal statement, which is literally the keystone to your whole application. And the diversity statement is talking about what you're going to do to add value. I'm calling it the diversity statement because it really comes down to your diversity, right? To how you are unique and how your uniqueness is going to amplify the class in and outside of the classroom, right? In terms of the community. So when you're thinking about the diversity statement, it is such a critical component of your total application. It's about the same length as your personal statement, and it's not repeating the same information as your personal statement. So here's a couple of key factors for you to walk away with from the diversity statement. Number one, don't repeat what you have in the personal statement and your diversity statement. At best, put a small indication in the personal statement of something that is a kernel that we can then expound on as it comes into your diversity statement, right? So you may indicate in your personal statement something about your identity, something about volunteer work that you've done, something that you're very passionate by, indicated in there, and then extrapolate on it as it pertains to the diversity statement, okay? So one is don't repeat. Number two is if you have a volunteer experience that you've done, again, the person who talked about the Compassion Prison Project, if you have other things to talk about in your personal statement, okay, talk about that and leave the volunteer activity, if possible, for the diversity statement. It's a great way of really kind of bringing to the surface the volunteer work, your sense of compassion, how you're going to add to the community. Okay, so again, I think the diversity statement should really also include that volunteer experience and then talk about that as long as you don't talk about it in the personal statement. Another factor of the diversity statement that's very important is, again, constantly reminding yourself and asking yourself, how am I adding value to the classroom? And as I said, classroom and the community, not just the classroom, but the classroom and the community. How are you adding value? Now, some of you may say, I don't have a lot of diversity. I'm privileged. I am of a group of people that are quite overrepresented in law school. I don't have much diversity. And the fact is the following: diversity is not just race. It's not just ethnicity or nationality. It's sexual orientation. It's medical tribulation, right? It is a personal experience you had. It's travel. It's a language you speak. It's a volunteer experience that you had. It's being tall, being short, being, obese. It's being, anorexic. It's medical. It's a whole bunch of different things that makes you unique. And because of that unique factor, it's dictated certain aspects of your life. And because it's dictated certain aspects of your life, it's opened your brain and your mind to thinking in different ways, which has made you more, again, the end goal is to say tolerant, open-minded, compassionate, understanding. These are the buzzwords. These are the things that they want to see. They don't want to get at somebody who's a bigot, somebody who's closed-minded, somebody who doesn't understand, is not empathetic with other people. That's not what the legal field wants to expound. It's not what the legal field wants to attract. They want people who are compassionate, people who are going to be zealous advocates. So think about those three, is asking yourself constantly, how am I adding value? Put in the volunteer experiences in your diversity statement, and don't, if you can, avoid putting in the personal statement only, again, unless you have nothing else to talk about in your personal statement, then you can talk about the volunteer experience and find another topic to talk about in your diversity statement. But again, going back to the first point, don't repeat what you have between the two, okay? And again, please feel free to ask me any questions you have on the diversity statement. Okay, we got a question stating that, what happens if we have another essay of the school? Do we still need to write a diversity statement? And let's say the school is asking for an essay that's specific to why our school. Yes, I think it's still worthwhile. And the way that you would include it, and even if the school doesn't ask for it, is to include it as a supplement to your total application, right? So include it as a supplement. Worst case, they won't read it. Best case, they will read it, because remember, you're not being interviewed. So this is an important opportunity to include as much pertinent information as to why you warrant a space in that class. So even if they're asking you for why a specific school or program, if the school is asking for that, because I remember Michigan doing that at some point, why that, then you want to basically answer that question, but also include in there the diversity statement if you can. Okay, so that is something I wanted to kind of talk about. And then lastly, and if we have time, I may have another topic, but last I want to talk about, now that you've decided you want to go to law school, I've talked to you about one component of law school, which is the diversity statement and stuff, and putting your application together. The last thing I want to talk about is which law school you should be applying to. And this is going to be, again, impacted by COVID, because you cannot audit classes typically now unless you can get permission to do so from the professor. You can't typically visit law schools now because travel is more restricted and they're limiting ability of students to go to different schools. For example, just last week, I went to my alma mater, Berkeley, and I was doing a quick tour of the campus. I was recording a video actually for YouTube, which I'm hoping to put up, to do a little private tour of the campus. There was no way I can get in there. All the doors were locked. I live in Santa Monica, so I went over to UCLA Law just, I think, 2 days ago. And again, all the doors were locked. You couldn't get in. So it is something else that is an important factor. An important factor that comes in is that you can do physical tours of the campus. So how are you going to choose which law school to apply to if you can't do some of those? So a lot of the research is going to have to be done online or speaking to people. So here's a couple of key components. Again, I'm going to be speaking about this on a YouTube video that I'm going to be putting out on our channel, which I think Steve will put on the comments and the show notes of this webinar. But the idea here is that you want to be thinking about a couple of major factors. And one of the most important factors is school culture. This is so critical, is how do you feel within that school environment? Why? Because you are going to be spending 3 years there. So if you already from the jump don't feel comfortable in that school, it's going to impact your whole experience, your grades, your network, your ability to better understand the material, potentially your bar passage, and your affiliation with the university for many years thereafter. So you want to make sure you're picking the law school that also fits who you are and what you want to do. Let's say, I have to admit, if I got into Harvard and I got into, I don't know, let's say UCLA, because I like Los Angeles and I like California, but I think Harvard is a little more stuffy and I don't know what, I probably would still bite the bullet and go to Harvard, even though it may not bode well with who I am. But at least it gives me a better sense of, I mean, you just have to be realistic too. But let's just say you got into two schools that are fairly equally ranked. Let's say UCLA and, I don't know, Georgetown. You may say to yourself, I would prefer to be in UCLA because it's a smaller class size in Georgetown. Georgetown, I believe, is the biggest law school out there. So you want to think about class size. Another factor about UCLA. UCLA is located smack in the middle of campus, almost pretty much in the middle of campus. Georgetown, for example, is located near the Capitol, near Capitol Hill, while the campus of Georgetown is located in Georgetown. And there's like at least 6-7 miles, which in DC, 6-7 miles feels like 5 states removed. I lived there for about 6 years. And it's a small town, but it is like Georgetown really feels, the law school feels isolated on its own. So do you want to be in a school that it has its campus on the law school facility on the main campus, or are you fine with it being removed? Do you want to be in a university that is a city university, like to some degree Georgetown, which is located smack in the middle, or NYU, which is located smack in the middle of New York? Or would you rather be in a school like Cornell, which is out in Ithaca, which is also a city? There's a city around it, but it's very, very far removed from a big city environment. So geography is an important factor, and location and so forth, in terms of better understanding that school environment, because that dynamic also plays a role into it, because a lot of students may be commuting there, right? A lot of students may be commuting in, if it's a big city environment, versus a school that's more isolated, then they wouldn't be commuting as much. And that also plays a role within the whole experience, right? So those are the factors. Other factors that you want to be thinking about within culture is not only the class size, but the diversity of the campus. How diverse is it? Gender parity, racial parity, and so on and so forth. You want to be thinking about how friendly it is to the state and the school to your sexual orientation. You want to be thinking about what kind of law journals they have. Can you walk on a law journal, or do you have to apply to every single law journal? Is the class pass, no pass? Right? Which also plays a role in the competitive spirit of the campus. I wouldn't say Berkeley wasn't competitive in terms of a competitive spirit, but being a almost pass, no pass, it's pass, honors, highest honors, and subsidiary pass on the lower end, but typically everybody passed. Most people got at least one honor grade a semester. Some people got highest honors, right? But it really felt so much easier than worrying about the B plus and the B and the A minus and the A and so on and so forth. So you want to be thinking about the grading system as well of that school, because it plays into the school culture, the kind of professors they have, and so on and so forth. So school culture by far and away is the most important factor when selecting a school. Other quick points within selecting a school, you want to be thinking about your funding options. Some people and some clients have asked me, is it better to take a full ride from a mid-tier school than no money from a top, like a top T14 or T10 school? And again, I have my opinion on it. I think in the end of the day, you're going to end up paying yourself back from the work that you do. So it's worth taking on the debt if you get into Harvard versus if you get into Hastings. Hastings gives you a full ride. Harvard gives you nothing. I would still go to Harvard because the opportunities you're going to have from there are incredible versus going to Hastings and may have less resources than Harvard may have, and so to speak. So you want to be thinking about funding opportunities. And that also is a factor because some schools, really have limited funding as it comes to law students, because the idea is that once you graduate, you'll be able to make money as a lawyer. So there's not as much funding opportunities, but if there are schools that do provide, like for example, Berkeley has the LRAP program, which allows people that are going to go into the public sector, nonprofit related law will be able to reduce your debt afterwards, or even erase it. So there's these factors you want to think about. You want to think about what scholarships they have. And here's a fun fact, and I think this is a really cool thing that I was able to achieve when I was in law school, and this is not really typical. But when I was in law school, I was on the hustle, and I got into Berkeley, and I was over the moon, and I was ready to select it, and I got $0. Yeah, I got $0 for going to Berkeley. But when I got in there, and because it was a university that was on the main campus, I was able to really rub elbows with a lot of folks on the main campus to get to know a lot of people there. That really then got me to have opportunities to get on-campus jobs. So I ended up working as a TA, or what was called a graduate student instructor. I was able to grade exams on the main campus. And crazy enough, I was able to get summer jobs for 3 summers, not just 1, but 3 summers, because I also took a year off to do a master's degree and was able to parlay the law firm that I worked for in the first summer to also work with them in that in-between summer. And then I worked with another law firm for my second summer. All of that money I made, literally, I just dumped it right back in paying my debt and even made some savings. So I graduated with no debt from law school. So you always want to be thinking about out of the box, which goes back to that fundamental point. If I got into Harvard with no money and Hastings with a full ride, you could still go to Harvard and find ways of making money or earning cash or paying off your debts fairly quickly that you may have otherwise foregone because you didn't think that you could do that, and forewent a great opportunity at a top university. So debt and funding is another important part in school selection. Another important part, which is a fact, is reputation and ranking, which again, to me, in all honesty, was an important factor when I selected Berkeley versus other schools. I really wanted to go to a top tier because I knew it would provide me the opportunities in terms of employment, in terms of network, in terms of the caliber of students, so to speak. And I think it's proven and paid itself back in dividends in terms of the people I've met that I've consistently and interacted with for so many years since then. But it is a limiting factor, and it also helps you as a barometer to judge whether you can get into that school or not in terms of where it's ranked. So if you go to US News World Report and you take a look at their rankings, you can also take a look at where people lie in terms of their GPA, in terms of the LSAT, in terms of the 25th and 75th percentile, and so forth. Quick note, I had about less than a 5 to 10% chance of getting into Berkeley Law based purely on my LSAT performance, which was horrific. That being said, I still applied. I still applied to Yale. I still applied to Columbia, to Harvard, NYU. And while I got waitlisted at some of the top schools, I did get into Berkeley. And had I just gone purely off statistics, I would have never applied and ended up going to a lower tier law school. So don't let that be the be all end all, but ranking does play a role in terms of there is a plausible correlation between the quality of the jobs you get, clerkships, especially teaching opportunities. If you want to go into legal academia, it does help in terms of going into a top rated program. So those are just some of the other factors in terms of selecting your schools. Again, debt, funding, financial aid, school culture, geography, location, and in terms of ranking and reputation as a university. So those are just some of the key points. I think I still got some time. People, if you want, keep asking questions. I'm happy to answer them as they come. And I do have a little bit of time left. I believe, Steve, you can corroborate for that if I've got more time, because there was one more topic I could cover if we had time to cover it. Okay, awesome. So the last topic, which is odd that I would be speaking about this when we're looking at helping students get into law school, but I also want to help you better understand how to excel as a law student and what you can be doing to prepare for that in advance. Okay, so take it. This is my opinion. I would say I was an above average law student, but I was able to do a lot of cool things when I was a law student that really made my experience a lot better. And law school is never, I doubt anybody's going to say law school is so much fun because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of reading and it's a lot of research. It's painful in some ways. But the upside is probably the best degree I've had and one I've leveraged in many different facets in terms of my life. So these are a couple of quick tips that I think can help you prepare, and definitely when you get into law school, to excel as a student. And when I say excel, I want to kind of temper that by saying not just excel, but how to maximize your law school experience. So number one, we've talked about this, debt. So if you have debt, you're coming to school, think out of the box about how you can pay it off. You can start doing that from now, knowing that there's going to be a low likelihood of you getting financial aid. So think even now how you would pay off law school, and be smart about it. Savings, private donors, private scholarships. And then once you start at law school and you're in the law school experience, not your first semester, maybe not even your first year, but start thinking about, how can you make money while you're a law student? Maybe I'm just a consummate hustler, but I was finding opportunities, as I said, teaching, grading exams, working summer jobs, and even tutoring and doing other things on the side whenever I had opportunities. Right Track started during law school, so I was already helping students with their applications. There's a lot of different opportunities that you can do to help pay off your debt so that you can avoid the golden handcuffs that exist once you graduate. And because I didn't graduate with debt, I had a lot of opportunity to do cool stuff, including going and working for the US government, starting Right Track, being an entrepreneur, and so forth. So one factor for success is how can you mitigate your debt so you don't stress about it during law school, and how you can minimize it afterwards so that you can have great opportunities. So you want to think about that now. Another factor is that you want to be thinking about how do you expand your own network on campus, because the network that you have from law school is mission critical. Rarely would you want to go to law school and graduate and just study the whole time, unless your parents owned a law firm and they're about to hand it off to you, and all you wanted to do is go to law school so you can just get the JD and just get the bar and move on with your life. Then I'm not going to say anything. Then you can probably just bury your head in the books. Doesn't matter which law school you go to. And then at that point, graduate and then continue with your family's law firm. But even in saying that, it does help to go to law school and network and build your community, because in the end of the day, those people that you interact with are also going to be a lot of your clients who will be referring people to you. So you don't want to kind of be, myopic in your vision and just have tunnel vision. You do want to be thinking about the community that you build and the network. To do that, you need to work on several key factors in terms of developing your network. What are those? That's leadership. That's the ability to prove to others that you have the wherewithal and the smarts to be able to excel, that they can trust you and refer people to you and work with you, which all comes back to your fundamental and one of the most important factors of any kind of graduate program, which is your reputation. That is such an important, critical factor, is the reputation you have. If you're seen as flaky, as opportunistic, as someone who's non-dependable, that reputation will carry with you for the rest of your life as it pertains to those people in that law school and those people's friends in that law school who may ask you or may ask them to vouch for you. All right? So your reputation and so forth is critical. So you do want to be taking activities that really showcase your leadership, your ability to go the distance, your ability to work well with others, and that will build your network and your community and people to go to bat for you. And that's very, very important. So when I was in law school, one of the things I did was I started a journal on campus for an area of law that didn't really exist. Another friend of mine did exactly the same thing. I'll use this example as well. I love it. Is that he was at Harvard Law. He loved sports in the law. He didn't find any journals or anybody doing anything in that area. He literally created a journal called the Harvard Journal, I think, of Sports Law. And that helped him get a job with a top sports team as their in-house counsel. So he designed his experience around that opportunity that didn't exist. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the next point. And that point is, if you know what you want to do, intellectual property, tax law, criminal justice, immigration law, corporate law, transaction law, whatever it is, if you know your area of law that you want to practice in, a classic one also, arbitration, international law, is that you want to design your law school experience around that area of law. And what does that mean? That means take classes, buddy up with professors, get mentors that know their area well, work every summer at a job in that area, work on a journal that focuses on that area, or create a journal like my friend did with sports law in that area. Basically just build that experience, your law school experience around, and maximize the law school experience around that job that you want to have. If you're fortunate enough to know what area of law. I didn't, so I couldn't do that. But this is advice I don't just give to people who are going to law school. This is advice I give people going to graduate school. When I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard, I went in there thinking I knew what I wanted to do, and very shortly thereafter decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And unfortunately, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, I couldn't shape my graduate school experience around that. Had I known what I wanted, I would have maximized it by getting to know the professors, the students, people who are like-minded, joined the organizations, found the mentors, found even funding opportunities, incubated the idea, could have done all kinds of things, but I didn't know. So if you do know what you want to do in law school and what you want to do after law school, by all means, create the experience of law school around that. And what you could do now to prep for that is really think through all the different areas of law and what one really kind of captures you, and then building your law school experience around that. Okay. Another factor that I think is important that you can build now, which also is going to play a role with your LSAT, is how to read more actively, right? So reading actively, don't just kind of read slow, but read actively in terms of, I mean, this is classic LSAT stuff that Steve, I'm sure, has talked about endlessly. But when you're doing those reading comp passages, you just don't read every word for what it is. There's a way to read it so that you're getting all the information and able to compute down huge long paragraphs into one sentence, almost summarizing in your head and moving on, because that's going to help you tremendously in reading your cases for law school. And it's going to help you even more importantly when you take the bar exam, right? So proactive reading, this is going to sound crazy. Typing, I swear to God, I was a horrible typer until I got to law school. I think that's how it happened. I think when I got to law school, I just suddenly, it just clicked. And I was an incredibly fast typer, at least in my opinion. And it helped me tremendously when I took the bar exam, because I have so many ideas. You can see I speak quite quickly. And I would not have been able to articulate it down on paper if I didn't type fast enough. So typing quickly is a very important factor. If you can learn to do that, if you don't type very well and you're chicken typing, I think it's called, then you want to learn that as a skill set ahead of time. Actively reading and also finding out what makes you learn. Are you more of a visual learner, right? An oratory learner? Are you more of both together? Like some people would download Audible, right? And listen to a book and they would be able to recall some information. Other people would obviously read the book, don't want to hear it. Some people, and this is crazy, and I used to do this, is download the Audible and read the book at the same time. And so the reading, listening to it would pace how fast I was reading through it, and it actively made me absorb information faster. And that's a very important factor when you're studying during law school and when you are taking the bar exam. And I discovered that I'm very good at studying when I'm studying with groups of people and spitting out what I had just learned and going back and forth until it literally just resonates and sticks in my head. So that's an important factor, is understanding these key qualities that make you a better student during law school and a better professional in the legal field after law school. And yeah, I think those are the four main factors that really helped me maximize my law school experience. I started a journal. I was on the law review because I published an article because I was thinking out of the box how I really want to get in the law review. So I was able to write an article with a professor as an independent study class, which I then was able to pitch to the law review. They published the piece. They invited me onto the law review. So I was on the law review. That helped me secure a job. Thinking out of the box in terms of how to pay my debt. As I said, I worked every summer and I worked on campus, and that helped me pay off my debt. In fact, I graduated with a profit, which really gave me a lot of liberties after I graduated in terms of job attainment and so forth. How to maximize it. I traveled. I did a concurrent degree by doing my master's right in the middle of law school in Cambridge, which allowed me to get units from my time in Cambridge back and apply it back to my law degree. As well as I was able to learn how to write even more effectively and research more effectively through that, which I applied back to law school. The friends I made, the organizations I was part of, there was just so many factors that I was able to do that made my law school experience just really, really incredible and very enriching that I still benefit from many years later. So I hope that helps. What we've talked about, again, is COVID and how it's going to potentially impact your applications. We've talked about what law school to go to in terms of all the major factors to consider, especially during a time of COVID. We talked about the importance of the diversity statement and how to really kind of stand out with that. And we've now talked about and ended with discussing how you can excel and what you can do to prepare to excel as a student and what you can do to maximize your law school education. So that's pretty much it from me. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can cover, but I want to be respectful of the time of Steve and the audience. And feel free, as I said, Steve's been incredibly gracious, offering my information so that people can contact me and so I can respond to questions. We have a very strong relationship with Steve. I'm, as I said, very grateful for all the work that he's done in this space. It's very, very important to farm out content like this for people to better understand what, how to basically improve as students, as applicants, and really succeed in the legal profession. Because in the end of the day, there are so many different avenues for the legal profession. And as I stand back now, having done 3 graduate degrees, my law degree still stands strong as one of the most important in helping me feel a sense of empowerment, a sense of security, and a sense of ability to really make an impact in society. So with that, thank you very much, Steve, for having me. And again, please feel free to contact me to everyone that has participated and will participate and watch this video thereafter. More than happy to help in any way. And we have a pretty great team that does awesome work in terms of law school admissions. So thank you for that, Steve.
Thank you so much, Hamada. You're a pro. I really appreciate your taking the time for such a detailed and thorough presentation, bringing everyone up to date on how COVID has been affecting everything and what applicants can do to set themselves up for success. So I really appreciate you taking the time once again. I've put a few links in the chat here to your YouTube channel, which you mentioned, as well as your website, righttrackadmissions.com, as well as your email. So folks can feel free to follow up with you, pester you with questions, and of course, hire you for your services.
I appreciate it. Thank you much, Steve, as always. And everybody stay safe and stay sane out there, and good luck on your applications.
Thanks so much, Hamada. I really appreciate you taking the time again. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.